Hello, I'm Bernard Norcott-Mahany. I work at the Bluford branch of the Kansas City Public Library. April is National Poetry Month, and for April of 2022, I am reading poems by Horace. These come from his collection of poems called the Odes, books 1 through 3, which were published as a unit in 23 BCE. I'll be reading the last poem of book 2. This is a poem addressed to Maecenas, who is his patron. Horace was not a poet for hire. He didn't sort of sell his poetry. But, he was not himself a wealthy person, so he depended on sort of the kindness of Maecenas, who was a good patron to him and to Virgil. So, he was able to live a good life. He did not a rich life, but he seems to have disdained riches. But he was a son of a former slave. So his father had been a slave, was a freedman at the time that Horace was born, but Dad felt that it was important for his son to get a top education, and he did make sure that happened, and that actually guaranteed Horace the fame that he has. And this poem, even though it comes at the end of book 2 and not the end of book 3, because the 3 were published as a unit, sounds a lot like a closing poem. He's basically saying, in a sense, I'm never going to die. Right, my fame will live on, which is the same thing he says in poem 30 of book 3, which is the last poem in the 3-book collection, which will be the last poem we'll do in April. So this is to Maecenas. By form, being a bard and being a bird, I'll take my flight up through the brilliant air on powerful wings, taking my leave of the city, taking my leave of envy, flying high. Dearest Maecenas, I declare that I, to whom you call, I, child of a former slave, will never die, that I will never be imprisoned by the waters of the Styx. Even as I speak, I feel the skin begin to loosen, pucker, and wrinkle about my ankles. I feel the feathers softly gather upon my shoulders and my arms, becoming wings. Melodious bird, I'll fly above the moaning Bosporus, more glorious than Icarus. I'll coast along above the coast of Sidra and over the fabled Hyperborean steppes. The Colchians will hear, the Dacians too, who say that they have no fear of Roman arms, and farther still the Galonians will listen, the Iberians by the Ebro, they will listen, and those who drink the water of the Rhone will learn to be more learned from my song. Therefore, when you in error think I've died, provide no ritual dirge, no eulogies, no grievers weeping noisily at my tomb. It's all superfluous. I won't be there. So he's going to transcend death by his poetry, and his poetry will travel all over throughout Europe and even beyond. So the Dacians that he mentions, the Dacians were at this point not part of the Roman Empire. They didn't become part of the Roman Empire for about 100 years when the Emperor Trajan conquered Dacia. That's basically modern-day Romania. And so even those far-off people who don't really like the Romans, even they'll be reading his work, is his point. So it's rather a bold statement for him to make. He makes a similar statement at the end of book 3, poem 30, where he says that he's built a monument more lasting than bronze. So it's a similar sort of idea that he himself won't fully die as long as his verses survive, and he is expecting them to survive and thrive long into the future.